Hello, Dean. Congratulations on your appointment as the new Dean of UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television. Being an
Thank
alumna of the school, what is the significance of this for you?
When I was choosing graduate school in film and television directing and production, the reputation of UCLA TFT as the auteur school compared to the other major film schools really moved me to choose it. And what I mean by the auteur school is that UCLA TFT really celebrates the independent cinema. When you study there, you get command of all aspects of the language, grammar, vocabulary, structure of film and theater so that you can bring expert collaborators together. Um, and what also makes UCLA TFT distinct is that from the very beginning, it really integrated scholarship and practice together so that it became a model for how other institutions taught film, television, and theater because scholarship makes production stronger and vice versa. So our scholars produce and our makers know history, theory, and criticism. And I love this boundary breaking approach because it reflects the way that I think, that I need to stand on the shoulders of the people who came before me in order to understand what I was making, or if it was going to be a book, or if it was going to be a film. And, coming from, growing up in the Philippines, I grew up under martial law and the Marcos regime, which controlled the kinds of films that were made or the way that artists could speak. And even within those really limiting, powerful pressures, the greatest cinema was made. Lupita Aquino Kashiwahara and Lino Broca, they were making films that really invited audiences to stand up and say, my life experiences are worth celluloid, that those experiences can be explored in this medium and in a way that really taught people how to see themselves, how to see society. And so I knew I was going to go to UCLA TFT to become powerful and to learn how to use film, theater, and television, uh, not only to share stories, but to investigate my stories. Like how did I grow up? Who was my mother? Who was my father? And why did they say those things? And why did I respond in a certain way? So it was going to be this very special place where my own story came to matter.
Mhm. And how is your transition now from Dean of UC Santa Cruz, where you were also a distinguished professor in the Department of Film and Digital Media, to your current position now at UCLA?
Well, UCLA is very special because it is at the center of entertainment industries. Here at UC Santa Cruz, it's the best kept secret, for making art, crafting scholarship in the arts. And, we're located in a much farther place. And so the spirit of experimentation is very, very strong. And similarly to UCLA, we have such distinguished faculty and very ambitious, aspirational students. However, in Los Angeles, as the center of film, television, digital media, and theater, there's a certain kind of way that impact, global reach is possible. What happens at UCLA is the number one public school in the entire country, in higher ed. How we teach film, theater, and television is being watched and being emulated. And it's such a storied institution in terms of creating a dazzling diversity of stories in Hollywood. The faculty there included Tashoma Gabriel, who was the godfather of third cinema. He studied Filipino films from Africa, Latin America, and the diaspora. And he basically said that, people are creating nomadic aesthetics and, aesthetics that come from a diaspora, a scattered people. And so UCLA is really well known for engaging global perspectives that at the same time was imbricated with cinema's power for social transformation, the transformation of a people, the transformation of nations. And so there's a particular stage, a particular platform that UCLA Theater, Film, and Television occupies. It's the flagship theater and film and television school in the best public higher system in the world. And with this kind of platform also comes a great sense of global responsibility. And I'm really coming here with um, the strengths of bringing together the community at Santa Cruz, as a scholar, as a filmmaker, and the kind of atypical background that I bring that really prioritizes a global perspective to represent diverse voices and stories. So I'm super excited about what this experience, for my own scholarship and for my own filmmaking can really do to ensure that UCLA Theater, Film, and Television, remains the leader in inclusive curricula and cultivating filmmakers to have a global perspective and an innovative spirit that will strengthen what Hollywood looks like from all over the globe, because our students come from all over the globe. Our faculty come from all over the globe.
Yes. With the current state of affairs in our country, how do you propose to improve the AAPI representation, DEI in film and TV industries, and increase women directors and creatives in film and TV?
UCLA, as a public institution, has been for decades the number one school for economic and social mobility. It has really transformed not only the industry, but the very lives of the people who are making films and theater and getting access to this very, very powerful language that can make sure that the dramatic, comedic stories from these underrepresented communities um, gets its due. So UCLA, having been known for inclusive excellence for many decades, continues to be an important value that the institution holds. And so, the students come from those perspectives. And the major study on diversity in Hollywood comes from UCLA. It was led by our provost, actually, the sociologist of representations and inequality, Darnell Hunt. And when you read the Hollywood Diversity Report, it's really stunning. Like you see that the population of California is almost half Latino, but less than 4% of speaking parts come from Latinos. I mean, that is just horrible because it's a perspective of the world that's so limited and it doesn't reflect what we see on the streets. Not only the way we get along, but the way we enrich each other's lives. And so I really look forward to bringing the body of work that I have produced, which has really been on the genders and sexualities and family stories of AAPI communities as a model for every single student in our school to say that my stories matter and that we have not yet seen the true excellence of cinema unless all voices are included in the authorship of this very, very popular genre. So I really look forward to seeing that grow. And the last thing I'll say about it actually is that what's so distinct too about the world-class education in film and theater that UCLA TFT provides is that it's affordable compared to other institutions. UCLA TFT provides this world-class education at a fraction of private institutional costs. So it's really important to maintain that accessibility, of that financial accessibility at the same time that, we are serving a global student body, a diverse student body. And so there's going to be great things ahead, not only in terms of building the communities of collaboration, uplifting communities who have not had access to film. And so I look forward to making sure that our students and everyone who comes into contact with UCLA TFT, gets an affirmation about the unfinished business of cinema, the unfinished business of inclusion that we face in our country today. it has to be excellent. It has to be accessible both.
Yeah. As a filmmaker, you have done a number of documentaries and narrative films. So, what are you working on right now?
Well, Janet, as you know, the greatest actress of Philippine cinema just passed away. Ate Guy, Nora Honor, and I grew up as a Noranian, as a child, because she was this small in stature, dark-skinned woman who also had this, mole on her face,
Okay.
right? And she's like the quintessential Filipina with this powerful singing voice. And she sang, Visayan songs that even my own mother and grandmother sang to me as a child. So even before I came into consciousness as a baby, as a toddler, Nora Honor was this giant figure. Her voice was, I think, I heard in the womb. And so to see her portray characters, not only of, domestic workers, but also of miracle workers, of ambitious nurses. She really embodied, the way Filipinas are known all over the world, right? But beyond that, she possessed a power, I mean, a real love for the people. And she enabled for films to happen at a time of great censorship. And she used her star power in order to do that. So I'm so glad. I mean, not just glad, I'm deeply happy that her work is, being recognized in the greatest film festivals all over the world. She's an award-winning actress. And she gave us a sense of worth and value, that our emotions mattered, our feelings mattered when Filipinos in her movies were essentially treated like animals who had who experienced brutal death, in the hands of colonizers. And she said that this is a story worth telling in order to awaken people about, their lot in the global economy so that, we can have the language to understand our humanity. And so I'm really thinking about her a lot. And I'm very lucky that there are other scholars, like Jasmine Trice, who is a scholar of Philippine cinema who's at UCLA. There's another great scholar of Philippine cinema named JB Capino who's in Illinois. And I think we need to write a book on Nora Honor. I mean, apart from all of the work that you do in popular journalism for it, but to really dig deep into her body of work. I'm also thinking a lot about a memoir of leadership because AAPI women are the least represented in not only higher education leadership, but in many industries. And what does it mean to lead with our backgrounds and with compassion and ambition both, in recognizing the value of all voices. So I know that I'm charting new terrain as a leader because I don't look like the typical leader. And I'm writing it all down. I'm putting into history how I'm charting new terrain, the various things that people say to me that can be quite shocking, that would never be said to other people. And you can grieve it. You can grieve the disparagement and the disregard that comes from, an atypical background, a disparaged background. But I think I welcome the chance to educate about how we need a diversity of leaders in order to lead a diverse society. Because if you have perspectives that you acknowledge are different and you find ways to work together, then the community is stronger. The community of knowledge is stronger. All of the research shows that, diverse authorship, um, diverse voices in cinema always generate a larger audience or a larger box office draw. So within this context, when diverse voices are, being belittled, we actually need to invest in making sure that everyone can speak in order to find the solutions to our most pressing problems. So yeah, I'm excited that I'll both be making films and writing books in in one of the greatest cities in the world.
Mhm. And have you ever met Nora Honor in person?
No, I've only met her in the dreams of cinema. You know, every time I walk into a movie theater. Have you met her?
Yes, I interviewed her several times.
Mm, I need to see that. You need to collect
Yeah.
those.
She's
Yeah.
wonderful. So,
Yeah.
if the UCLA Film School is noted for its award-winning alumni, can you talk about how exactly it must be to you to lead a film school who gave Hollywood many of its great directors and talents?
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about alumni not only like, Francis Ford Coppola, Alexander Payne, but also Julie Dash and Charles Burnett and Bully Woodbury. So we have alumni who have shaped classical Hollywood in a sense, the makers of The Godfather, or even, you know, recent films like The Holdovers, films that are made with an independent spirit so that when you're watching their films or even immersing or experiencing these films, you're in the presence of film like you've never seen before. At the same time, there's also a less known, legacy, which is the LA Rebellion. The LA Rebellion was a movement of filmmakers of color who entered UCLA um, right after the 1965 Watts Uprising through this program that was funded by the city and the state called Ethno Communications. And it was designed to be responsive to communities of color, including African American, Asian, Chicano, Latino, and Native American communities in the LA region. And this program fundamentally changed representation in Hollywood. And really, at the same time, and this is how they did it, they exemplified independent film excellence by bringing multiple communities together to investigate their stories, to dramatize their stories. So if you can imagine, filmmakers from different backgrounds supporting and collaborating each other, guess what? The results are some of the best films in the world that you'll ever see. So right now, the solution to our problems about representation can be found in the archive of UCLA TFT. I'm talking about films like Charles Burnett's Killer of Sheep. This was inducted into the National Film Registry, as well as recently Zainabu Irene Davis's film Compensation. Just thinking about these films, it makes me experience this kind of feeling of gigil, like just an overwhelming feeling of excitement and joy that these films in the archive coming into the hands of our young Bruins now at UCLA means the new films that are going to come out, the new theaters that's going to come out are going to blow our minds. And I'm so thrilled that the New Yorker just actually published an article last week about the LA Rebellion. And I have to say that, I was at UCLA in the early 90s. And I think that was also a resurgence of a golden age of UCLA as well. I mean, this is like at the tail end of the LA Rebellion. So people like Justin Lin, who made not only The Fast and Furious, but other films. Marco Williams, the eminent documentarian. Colleen Smith, who is an artist that's singular. Like she designs a T-shirt, it sells out, costs $150. But beyond that, she makes music and music videos, films. Shonali Bose, who's a global, filmmaker from India, Rachel Ramis, who's one of the most successful television directors. So all of these people I went to school with, and they made groundbreaking films and television that advances Hollywood and independent film. And all of us really built from this legacy of the LA Rebellion. The UCLA TFT, I will argue, singularly transformed Hollywood to diversify and to recognize not only diverse voices, but the importance of bringing community together to collaborate.
Mm. And if you were given a dream project, what would it be and why?
If I were, well, as you know, Janet, I'll answer it in two ways. The first is, as you know, I made this film called The Celine Archive, which is not about myself. It's about a woman named Celine Navarro who was, buried alive by her community, supposedly for committing infidelity, but actually it was more in line of um, ousting domestic abuse in the community, and she ended up being punished for it, you know. And in conducting the research for that film, I came to know so much, you know, about early Filipino immigration into the United States. Did they drive cars? Did they only ride a bus? I didn't know that they drove cars. I didn't know, for example, that the entire community gathered together so they can have baptisms, so they can have marriages in a world where they were excluded from all of that. So it's really stunning to think about the way that they mobilized power and they mobilized community in a time where they were so dehumanized and so under-resourced, you know, just getting poorly paid. But at the same time, like figured out that it was important to dance together, to eat together, you know, to help each other move, you know, from house to house when their houses were being burned. So there's something about that early Filipino immigrant community in California. I want to tell that story in a narrative form. You know,
Yeah.
because Celine Navarro and her sisters were these very elegant women who were well spoken, had beautiful handwriting, and were also very ambitious, you know. Not only one of them became a Hollywood extra, you know, in all of these movies. You know, that they had this imagination to say, I matter, I'm an American, and I belong in the screens of America's memory, right? Which is what cinema is. So that's a dream. And then I think the second dream is really to mobilize the alumni of UCLA theater, film, and television, you know, so that the ambitions of the school in the nation and in the globe can be strengthened by the resources of the alumni, as well as the knowledge that they have on the ground at the front lines of how a movie gets made. You know, I'd love the dream, I think, is for us not only to eat together, but to read together, you know, to really imagine what should cinema look like now. Um, AI, I think, is going to be one of the biggest technological innovations of our lifetime.
Mhm.
And it's a source of fear, but it's also a source of inspiration. So, what does it mean for TFT to be at the forefront of that industry evolution? I look forward to industry partnerships, community partnerships, government partnerships, alumni partnerships with the school so that we can also, you know, communicate the importance of higher education in shaping industry. So I really look forward to doing that. And I have to tell you, Janet, I was at UCLA last week and I
Mhm.
was walking in the main drag and I saw this sign. And the sign really just stopped me at my tracks because it was a sign that said Ube pastry available at 12 different locations at UCLA TFT, at UCLA campus. And I thought, when I saw that sign, I thought, dreams come true. Because if you can find your food where you work and where you live, that is such a welcoming uh, door, you know, to belonging, you know, and I think they put up the sign not just to tell Filipinos like, oh, your food is here. It's because everybody loves ube.
Yeah.
You know, like ube is a part of our ecosystem of what it means to be American, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a part of the dream is that, you know, a truly inclusive arts school, you know, that says that the worlds that we make in cinema and theater should look like the worlds that we want, you know, where everyone matters and where our stories really shape the language of film. It's so exciting. It's so exciting what's ahead, you know, and knowing that even in times of silencing and repression, creativity will beat all of that as long as you encourage it and you give it confidence. And, you know, I look forward to our young people and the films and theater that they're going to make because I am committed to helping them to become free and strong in order to do that.
Talking about Ube, are you the first Filipina to lead the school?
I think so. I think I am the first woman of color to lead the school, and perhaps even the first person of color to lead the school in a permanent way. One of our distinguished faculty members, I love and respect him so much, is Chon Noriega, who is considered, the godfather of Chicano cinema. His work has, not only impacted scholarship, but he has enabled so many filmmakers, to produce work. And so he's currently the interim dean who I'm going to succeed. So yes, I don't think that I was the first Filipina to be a student there. I'm not sure because I think Cecilia Manguera Brainard was also there, but maybe at the extension school. So research needs to be done. But when I was at UCLA Film School, we started a group called Cinegang.
Yeah.
Cinegang, and it was composed of me and Ernesto Ferronda, who's the creative producer for Justin Lin's company, Ken Angliongto, who was an animator, Pancho Gonzalez, who was a cinematographer at the time. And what we did, I think, really exemplifies what it means to be a Filipino American filmmaker. We not only brought artists and filmmakers to trigger a Filipino American cinema, but we read together and we brought scholars together so that we can say this happened, this existed. I think one of the filmmakers we brought was Michael Magnaye, who made this gorgeous film called White Christmas. And so we also brought together John Castro and Jean Cahayon when they were first beginning to make the debut. And so we were helping to launch, a movement essentially at the time at one of the major film schools in the world. We claimed our space there and we learned how to, write grants in order to produce programming of Filipino cinema. And, as a scholar, I ended up teaching Philippine cinema. I didn't even know that I was doing it. But when I looked at my syllabus once, I said, oh my God, I'm teaching Filipino cinema. The entire class was based on that. But at the time, I think I had called it something like race, sex, and diaspora. But, how can you not be obsessed with the best cinema in the world, right? That's coming from the Philippines.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, what are your short and long-term plans as the incoming dean of the UCLA Film and Television School?
So currently, UCLA Theater, Film, and Television is currently upgrading its facilities, including renovating our teaching stages and our production equipment. And I am a joyful fundraiser. I want to bring, alumni, parents, industry, foundations, and friends who want to support film and theater higher education. Because, of course, the state funding is more limited now. So we really want to make sure to um, address pressing issues in facilities as well as to upgrade all of the equipment. So that's top of mind right now. And the way that I'm going to do that, of course, is really bring together alumni giving, annual gifts, working with foundation and the state, to mobilize fundraising so that the school gets the resources that it needs. So that is both a short-term and long-term goal. Within 5 years, I really need to stabilize the fundraising to a higher level that really fits the stature of UCLA TFT as the premier public higher ed institution for teaching film and theater, to support, the academic and creative work there. Any world-class education has to expand its relationships across the globe, to partner with not only entertainment and corporate leaders, but with community organizations. We need to make sure that UCLA TFT is known all over the world so that we can partner together to make stories. I think a lot about 90% of the jobs in acting are not so much in theater, but they're in television and they're in film. So what does our training look like, right? Like, can we teach students how to act in K-drama? How can we teach students to act in telenovelas, as well as American soap opera? So I really look forward to partnering with established institutions in entertainment, but also, grassroots theater. You can't deny, you know, um, queer women of color, film organizations or theater companies, right, that are committed to telling stories that are particular to their community, such as East West Players. So there's much ground to be broken in terms of bringing together uh, community in the most broadly defined way.
Mhm.
So I look forward to doing that. And I think another big goal right now, Janet, is finding a house and moving to LA. You know, I personally know the power of loss. And I know the transformative experience of mourning and grief as a mother who has lost a child unexpectedly. And I know that I'm coming into LA at a time of great loss and great devastation in the fires of Altadena and also in the Pacific Palisades. There's a great deal of rebuilding, but we will never be made whole, you know. I think, people can be cruel unnecessarily and say, "Oh, at least you're alive," you know. But I'm a production designer and I know what objects mean beyond their materiality. So when people lose their things, they lose a sense of self. They lose an order of things. And what does it mean to walk into a place of loss and devastation? So I'm going to lean into the power of cinema in order to recover, to recuperate, and to patch, the wounds. They won't go away. I mean, just too much was lost. Not only death, but the things that make us who we are. So there's that. And I look forward to connecting with communities within that historical moment of loss
Mhm.
as a time where we can ignite our creativity.
Mhm. My last question is, what would you advise Filipino American filmmakers, since you're in the academy and you're also a filmmaker yourself?
What would I advise Filipino and Filipino American filmmakers and scholars? There is nothing more beloved to me than the classroom as a site of self-discovery. And it's quite unfortunate that higher education and the classroom is currently, being questioned as a site of indoctrination rather than what actually happens here, which is the opposite. It is a site of exploration. It is a site of mining, your own stories and the stories of others, expanding your knowledge so that you can learn how to care for other people and have a larger sensibility that can give you pleasure and happiness because the world is so rich and there's different ways of knowing, there's different ways of painting, there's different ways of telling a story, and we can learn to express ourselves better when we know more languages of cinema, more languages of theater. And so I encourage Filipino and Filipino Americans and anyone who wishes to improve their lives to invest in the classroom, to do your homework, to do the reading, because that's where the work happens. When you're actually reading a book, it's not torture. It's actually figuring something out that you didn't know, not only about the world, but yourself. And what I love about reading is that it compels you to write and it compels you to create. So really invest in higher education and read. And when you watch movies, don't be overwhelmed by it. Interrogate it and say, why did it make me feel the way I felt? Why did I cry? Why did I cower? Why did I hide? Why did I walk around? I'm a very physically responsive person when I'm watching movies at home. And then even when I'm watching theater, I look around the room like, what's happening to us? What's happening to us? Let's figure this out and let's give it language. And let's try to see like what makes film and theater so powerful. Let's find the language to articulate that. And so rather than think of, higher education or even homework as work, it's actually fuel and food and pleasure and satisfaction and growth. So do the work and enjoy it. And I look forward to what the next generation comes up with, the way they think and the way they live, you know, it's their world and we're just living in it. And so don't relinquish the gifts of your ancestors and the gifts of the past, which is movies, theater, plays, art. And there's really great treasures ahead if you do the work and you approach it with the humility of gobbling up what others before you have figured out.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful talking to you and hope to see you in person here in LA.
Yes, and to watch movies together
Yes.
and go to plays together.
Yes.
I can't imagine a greater joy than doing that with you because you know so much, not only about movies and theater, but fashion. And so we shall go to these and
Yes.
dress up.
Thank you very much, Dean. I know you're very busy, but thank you very much for spending time with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet. I appreciate you.
Bye bye.